My name is L.A. Camden. I'm 24 now, and I'm finally living in a city where no one knows my brother's name. But 2 years ago, I was still in the house where his shadow stretched across every wall. We grew up in a neatly trimmed suburb outside of Charleston. My parents, Karen and Thomas, are the kind of people who frame every award, rehearse dinner party anecdotes, and believe that family loyalty means silence when it gets uncomfortable. My older brother Noah was the blueprint. Varsity soccer, debate team captain, early acceptance into one of the best med schools in the country. He was everything you'd expect from a golden child. And then there was me, Eli, quiet, always sketching diagrams in the corners of my notebooks, not failing, not bad, just less. When Noah got into med school, it was a celebration fit for royalty. No. Really, there were silver balloons that spelled Dr. No floating above a backyard tent. My mom wore pearls. My dad gave a speech that ended with, "This is what excellence looks like." I remember standing beside the punch bowl, invisible in my own home, wondering what would happen if I told them I wanted the same dream. So I didn't. Not then. I kept it to myself. I applied to med schools without telling anyone. I studied for the MCA'd in secret, after my shifts at the community clinic where I worked admin and wiped down chairs. I borrowed textbooks from a retired nurse who used to come in for blood pressure checks. I watched lectures on my phone with subtitles while my family streamed sitcoms on the big screen. And then, I got in. My acceptance email landed in my inbox at 5:41 a.m. on a Tuesday. I sat there in the kitchen, still in scrubs, reading the subject line like it was a mistake. Then I cried. Not from disbelief. I knew I had it in me, but because no one else ever did. I printed the letter and left it on the kitchen table. That night, my mom walked past it twice before glancing down and saying, "Oh, congrats, honey." My dad looked at it and gave a grunt. "Didn't know you were even applying." "Good for you, I guess" sentence. "Good for you, I guess," it echoed. Not "we're proud." Not "you worked so hard." Just the faint surprise that I'd done something worth acknowledging, followed by silence. No party. No cake. Not even takeout. Noah sent me a text. "Welcome to the club, little bro." I know he meant it kindly, but it felt like a participation trophy. I wanted more than inclusion. I wanted to matter. I waited a week before asking gently, could we do a small dinner? Just something to mark the moment. My mom blinked. "Well, we just threw something for Noah a while back. And we're trying to watch expenses this quarter." I didn't remind her they'd spent close to $6,000 on Noah's celebration. I didn't say that mine could have been pizza in the living room. I just nodded. Right. Of course. I went upstairs and booked a garden terrace through a friend from the clinic. A place with fairy lights and mismatched chairs. I invited 5 people. My real people. No family. Just those who'd seen me try, fail, and try again. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was survival. We held the dinner 2 weekends later under the soft canopy of Carolina dusk. There were string lights hanging from trees, a portable speaker humming with jazz, and tiny glass candle holders that flickered in the breeze. It was the kind of night people remember in fragments. Laughter echoing through the garden, the smell of rosemary bread, someone clinking glasses too early. Matteo, my closest friend since undergrad, stood up halfway through the night and raised a toast to Ellie Camden, who didn't wait for applause to become extraordinary. I swallowed the lump in my throat with sparkling cider and whispered a silent, "Thank you," into the air. No cameras, no posted selfies. No, family is everything captions. Just warmth, just real. And I thought I could leave it there. But the universe, or fate, or karma, or whatever you call that silent hand, had its own sense of timing. 3 days after the dinner, I got a message from Matteo. "Dude, don't be mad, but check the Sunday column." Attached was a photo of the local paper's lifestyle section. There I was, smiling beside a cake that read "Degar, see in progress," holding a cup mid-laugh. A half-page feature, a spotlight on local kids doing good. The headline, "Quiet Grit, Load Victory. Med School Dreams Realized." I laughed, Then I panicked, because I hadn't told my family. I got the first text from my sister, Nora, later that afternoon. Seriously. A party? No congratulations, no curiosity, just coldness, weaponized. Then came my mom's message. Why would you hide something like this? You know how that looks. My dad followed with, so it's true. You left us out on purpose. That last part stung, because they still didn't get it. They thought the worst part was being left out, not that they'd never shown up to begin with. That night, I sat in my apartment rereading their messages. I didn't reply. I didn't owe them a reply, not yet. The next morning, Nora called. I answered after the fourth ring. You know how embarrassing this is for us. She snapped. People are asking why we weren't at your party. I paused. Then I said, calmly, maybe because when I got in, none of you asked me how I felt. She scoffed. Oh, come on, Eli. This isn't about feelings. You made a whole thing out of excluding us. No, I said. I made a choice not to share joy with people who didn't know how to hold it. There was a pause. Then she hung up. I didn't hear from her again for 2 weeks. It was a Wednesday evening when I realized I was done waiting. Done hoping they'd change. Done pretending a small nod or a distracted, good job, was enough. Done making room for people who never made space for me. Instead, I started documenting. Not journaling, documenting. I opened a new folder on my laptop and titled it, Unseen Contributions. Inside it, I dropped PDF copies of utility bills I'd paid when the heating got cut off and no one noticed. Screenshots of money transfers I sent to Nora when she forgot her car payment. A Venmo receipt from when I quietly covered Dad's prescription refill last winter, after he said the insurance was being slow. I wasn't hoarding these out of spite. I just needed proof, for myself, that I wasn't bitter without reason. That I wasn't the dramatic one. That I wasn't imagining the pattern I'd grown up beneath like a ceiling that never let me stand tall. Meanwhile, word about the article kept spreading. Matteo's mom clipped it and stuck it to her fridge. A girl I hadn't seen since high school messaged me. This made me smile. You always deserved more recognition, but my own family, silence. Followed by indirect jabs. Nora posted a story on Instagram. A filtered photo of our brother Grant in his white coat, smiling mid-sip of champagne. The caption, proud of our future surgeon. Penn Family Matters. No mention of me, no tag. No shade thrown directly. Just enough coldness to feel like a snowball to the gut. And that was when something shifted. I stopped asking if they loved me. I stopped wondering if I was just too sensitive. I stopped bending into the shape they'd carved out for me. And I started planning, because a week later, an envelope arrived. Not from them, from a restaurant back in Charleston. Inside a formal invitation. You are cordially invited to a private dinner honoring Grant and Ely Camden, future doctors of the Camden family. No phone call, no personal message. Just a seat reserved. As if I were a prop they could pose beside the golden child again. Like now that the world had seen me, they needed to catch up. To reattach the accessory to the heirloom. I placed the envelope on my desk. Then I called Matteo. I have an idea, I said. It's not revenge. It's a message. He paused for half a second. I'm listening, he said. And I've already got my camera charged. The plan wasn't complicated, but it was precise. I wasn't going to crash the dinner. I wasn't going to scream or stage a scene. I was going to decline loudly. Matteo was the first person I ever trusted to understand the difference between drama and dignity. He helped me find a courier company with a polished, professional look, the kind that delivers for law firms and embassies. We picked a time. Not before dinner, not after dessert, right at the moment of the toast. I wrote the letter 3 times before it felt right. No anger, no begging, just clarity. To the organizers of this evening's celebration, thank you for including my name on tonight's invitation. It's a bold move. Honoring someone you never congratulated. I wasn't told about this dinner. I wasn't asked if I wanted to be a part of it. But I understand now. This isn't about me. This is about image, about appearing united, about performing pride. So I won't be there tonight. I hope the slideshow plays without errors. I hope the champagne sparkles. But I won't smile for cameras I didn't know were rolling. I'm not a background character in someone else's fantasy of a perfect family. I'm living my own story now. I like Camden. I printed it on thick, textured paper, folded it crisply, slipped it into an envelope with a wax seal, not to be fancy, but to make it feel final. On the night of the dinner, Matteo wore a blue button, down and dark slacks, blended in like another cousin. He borrowed a stabilizer for his phone, said it was for vlog footage. No one questioned it. I stayed home, lit a candle, made tea, watched the sunset from my dorm window. I expected nerves or maybe guilt, but all I felt was peace, a kind of stillness I'd never known in that house. At 8:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. From Matteo, delivered, right before the toast. You're not going to believe what happened next. Then, photo after photo. Tables draped in white linen. A projection screen set up behind the long table. Dad in a blazer, lifting a glass, Mom dabbing her eyes. Then came the courier, straight back professional, handing the envelope to my mother. She opened it, read one line, froze. Dad leaned over, read the rest. Nora, reading it upside down, whispered something sharp. Matteo said you could feel the entire room shift. Mom still tried to salvage the moment. She raised her glass, voice trembling. To our sons, both working hard to become doctors. But no one clapped. Not a single fork clinked a plate. Grant looked down at his hands and didn't speak. The final photo Matteo sent was of the cake table. 2 printed photos were clipped to the "Congratulations, Grant and Ella" sign. Only one of them was actually there. The other clip hung empty. And I sat in my tiny dorm room, smiling to myself for the first time in months. Not because I'd ruined anything, but because, for once, they couldn't pretend I wasn't real. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Grant. He never texted me first. Ever. It read, "I didn't know you weren't invited. They told me you were coming. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. Was this guilt, cleanup, or something real? I didn't answer right away. I reread it at lunch. Again at 3 a.m. Over and over, like if I stared at it long enough, I'd know if it was sincere. The next night I replied, "Sure, just us." He called me an hour later, video chat. When I picked up, he didn't start with a joke. No smile. Just a quiet, "Hey." I nodded. "Hey." He looked like he hadn't slept either. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear, Mom told me you were just being dramatic. That you'd show up at the last second. Like always." That stung, but I didn't bite. I just said, "But never got an invitation. The restaurant sent one." That's how I found out. He blinked. Damn. There was a silence. Not awkward, just heavy. "I knew things were weird," he said. "But I didn't realize it was this bad. It's always been like this." I told him. "You didn't have to notice. You were the one they noticed." He rubbed his face. "Yeah, I think I wanted to believe it wasn't that bad. For both our sakes. But after the letter, after Mom tried to do that toast like everything was fine, it was obvious. You were right. I didn't expect that. Not from him." Then he added something I'll never forget. "You know, I never liked that party they threw for me. The first one. It felt like they were clapping for themselves, not me. Like I was proof of their success, not a person." My eyes stung, but I said nothing. We talked for nearly an hour. About med school. About growing up in a house where silence echoed louder than support. About the difference between being seen and being used. It wasn't a perfect talk. We weren't suddenly best friends. But it was the first real conversation we'd ever had. The next day, Mom texted me. A long paragraph. Something about how things got out of hand, and how I should have come to them first instead of embarrassing everyone. I replied with one sentence. If I had ever felt heard, I wouldn't have had to write the letter. She didn't respond. Dad called once. Left a voicemail I didn't listen to all the way. It was stiff. More confused than sorry. And Nora, she posted a photo on her Instagram story. A wine glass, a blurry caption in white text. Some people live to play the victim. Must be exhausting. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because for the first time in my life, I knew I didn't owe them any. The silence between us became permanent after that. Not dramatic, not loud, just still. A few texts on holidays, an occasional group photo I was tagged in but didn't care about. That was it. No calls, no unexpected visits, no apologies. And I didn't chase any of it. Instead, I gave all my attention to the life I had built away from them. Clinicals, study groups, hospital rotations that left my legs aching and my heart racing. I didn't just survive med school. I came alive in it. I wasn't trying to be seen anymore. I was finally seeing myself. One weekend, Matteo and I walked through a downtown street fair. He bought an overpriced smoothie and made me pose in front of a booth that sold personalized stethoscope tags. "Look," he said, holding up one that read Dr. Carter healing loudly. I laughed. Too dramatic. He grinned.
"No such thing. I kept the tag."
Put it on my bag the next day. Weeks passed, then months. I barely noticed how far away my family had drifted because I didn't feel lost anymore. Until an email arrived from the school. They wanted to feature me in their quarterly spotlight. First, year students showing excellence in clinical performance and leadership. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I didn't think I deserved it, but because I did. They asked for a photo and a quote. I sent a picture of me in scrubs, standing outside the hospital at dawn, tired but smiling. And under the quote section I typed, "The people who believe in you are your real family, blood or not." A week later, it was live on the school website and shared on their social media. I got a few texts from classmates. Some friends from high school liked the post. Then a message popped up. It was from my mom's sister. "Just saw the article. You look so happy. I didn't even know you were doing all this. Your parents don't really talk about you anymore. They say things are complicated. But I'm proud of you." Truly, that message hit harder than I expected. Not because I needed her validation, but because it confirmed something I'd suspected for a long time. They weren't just silent about me. They were trying to erase me, not because I failed them, but because I refused to play along anymore. Matteo didn't even wait for me to finish reading the email before blurting out, "You know we're throwing a party for this, right?" I gave him a look. "It's just a school feature." He narrowed his eyes. "Zane, don't play modest. This isn't just a post. You've been killing it. You got featured. We celebrate." I opened my mouth to object, but he cut me off. "Before you say anything, I already booked the rooftop at the Astoria. Saturday 3 weeks from now. Catered. DJ string lights. I'm thinking semi-formal vibes. Think future Dr. Carter, but make it chic." I stared at him stunned. "Matteo, that's expensive." He smirked. "You're paying." "I'm just planning." I laughed. For the first time in a long time, I laughed without hesitation. We spent the next 2 weeks planning together, our dynamic effortless. Matteo handled vendors. I picked the playlist. Our friends helped with decor drinks. And the tiny personalized cupcake toppers that read, "Believe in Z." The night of the party, the city skyline was glowing. Warm lights strung overhead, candles flickering in mason jars, soft jazz transitioning to upbeat house music as guests arrived. And every single person there, they believed in me. They'd been there when it was hard, when it was quiet, when it wasn't headline-worthy. One by one, they toasted with genuine warmth. No staged speeches, no fake applause. Matteo raised a glass and said, "To Zane, for teaching us all what real resilience looks like." I stood beside him, hand trembling slightly as I lifted my own glass. To chosen family, to healing out loud, to building something real from the parts that were never fully seen. That moment, standing on a rooftop, surrounded by joy I didn't have to earn through pain, was more powerful than any childhood applause I'd ever wished for. I didn't post the party online, not for pettiness, but because this wasn't for anyone else to see. It was mine, all mine. The morning after the rooftop party, I woke up to sunlight and silence. No dishes to clean, No passive-aggressive texts, just the soft breeze through the window and the faint scent of champagne still clinging to my sleeves. I sat at my desk, still wearing last night's wrinkled dress shirt, and stared at the corkboard Matteo helped me hang last fall. The quote at the center read, "The people who believe in you are your real family, blood or not." There was a new envelope beneath it, cream-colored, formal, sealed with embossed initials I didn't recognize. Matteo must have slipped it in with the rest of the mail while I wasn't looking. I opened it slowly. Inside a folded letter, no greeting, just a handwritten message in neat script I immediately recognized. From my aunt, my mother's sister. "I saw the newsletter. I saw your face. I'm sorry I never asked before how you were really doing." Your parents, they tell their version. But I believe there's more. And if you ever feel like reconnecting with family, mine's an open door. I reread that sentence 5 times. For a moment, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt something else, something quieter. Grief. Grief for all the years I tried to get through to people who only saw what they wanted. Grief for the child version of me who thought love had to be earned with grades, favors, silence. I folded the letter gently and placed it in the drawer beside my desk. That night, Jeremy called again. We hadn't spoken since his last message, the one after the dinner disaster. He didn't ask how I was. He said, "I want to tell you something." Not as the brother who always got the spotlight. Just as someone who's learning. I waited. "I resigned from the hospital back home," he said. "I took a research fellowship across the country. Away from them." I blinked. "You what?" "I needed to start over. I kept thinking about your letter, about that slideshow with the missing picture. I realized I'd been performing for applause that never felt mine." There was a silence on the line. Not tense, just full. Then he added, "Thank you for writing that letter, for blowing the whole thing open." I didn't respond right away. I didn't know how. But I realized something important. Sometimes the ripple you cause by speaking your truth doesn't hit the people you aim for. Sometimes it reaches the one person you never expected, yourself. And that's where the healing really begins. I didn't call Jeremy back for days after that. Not because I was upset, but because I needed to sit with it. Let it settle. Let myself believe this wasn't just another surface, level shift before things snapped back into their old shapes. In the meantime, life moved on. The semester pressed forward. Clinical rotation started. My days were full of emergency room rounds, pages of patient charts, professors who challenged me and, for once, seemed genuinely excited to teach me. It was exhausting, beautifully so. On a Tuesday morning, while walking past the hospital's main lobby, I caught a glimpse of a framed photo on the wall. The caption underneath it said, "Future Leaders of Medicine, Class of 20XX. There were 20 of us, smiling, exhausted, hopeful. And there I was, front row, center. No missing photo. No blank space. That night I called Matteo. I didn't even say hello. "I'm thinking of visiting Jeremy," I said. There was a long pause on the line. Then Matteo, ever the wise one, said, "Do it. But do it for you, not to fix the past." I booked the ticket. When I arrived, Jeremy met me at the train station, looking like someone who hadn't slept well in days, but not in a way I found satisfying. He looked human, nervous. We didn't hug. We didn't make a big scene. He handed me a coffee and said, "The place I'm staying has a view of the river. Want to see it?" So we walked. And as we sat down on a rusted bench overlooking the gray water, I asked him something I'd never dared before. "Do you think they ever loved us the same?" Jeremy was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me and said, "I think they only knew how to love the version of us that made them look good. The quiet, obedient, shiny version. You never fit that mold." But that doesn't mean you were wrong. I looked out at the river and let that sink in. "I used to think I had to make them see me," I said. Jeremy nodded. "I used to think I had to keep them happy. I think we were both wrong." He smiled then, and it wasn't the polished grin from all the parties and speeches. It was tired, crooked, and real. I'm still figuring things out, he said. But if you're ever down to talk, really talk, I'm here. For the first time, I believed him, because this wasn't a toast or a headline or a forced family dinner. It was just two brothers sitting on a bench, finally not pretending. And in that stillness, something finally healed. After that trip to see Jeremy, I didn't return home. Home, the one with the front porch and the aging flower beds, was no longer mine. Not because I wasn't welcome in the literal sense. My mother would still send the occasional, "Hope you're well," message around the holidays, and my father, when prompted, might forward me a news article with a, "Thought this was interesting." But we never crossed the line into honesty, and I no longer crossed back into obligation. I began building something else instead. The quiet, determined life I had once imagined when I was 16 and invisible was no longer a fantasy. It was unfolding piece by piece. Every evening after class or rotations, I made myself dinner in my small kitchen. Nothing fancy, but always enough. I posted the newsletter feature from school on my corkboard, next to a quote Matteo had written on a napkin during one of our study breaks. Grow so far beyond their version of you that they wouldn't recognize you even if they tried. I liked looking at that one. It reminded me that this was never just about proving a point. It was about becoming. Jeremy and I talked a few times after the bench conversation. Not often, but each time felt a little more real. He'd tell me about a difficult surgery, a new attending who reminded him of our high school chemistry teacher, or his own private therapy sessions he had finally begun. I didn't always know what to say, but I listened. That was enough. As for Olivia, she stayed silent. Her Instagram remained a curated shrine of glossy dinners and motivational quotes. I wasn't in any of them. Neither was Jeremy, most of the time. Eventually, she posted a photo of herself holding a degree from a law certificate program and captioned it, "Redefining Success." For me, no tags. Just applause from her audience. I didn't feel anger anymore, just distance and clarity. Then, a year later, the inevitable happened. A wedding invitation, not from Olivia, but from Jeremy. It was modest. Surprisingly, an outdoor ceremony in a coastal town, no black tie dress code, no parental sponsors. Just a white card with simple gold lettering that read, "Zach and I are getting married. I'd like you to be there. Not for the picture, not for the speech, just for me." I stared at that line for a long time. I packed a suit. The wedding was beautiful, small, dozens of chairs, string lights, live violin music, and Jeremy looked happier than I had ever seen him. When I arrived, he hugged me first. No hesitation, no camera flash. Just two brothers with decades of distance between them, and maybe finally, a bridge. Midway through the reception, Jeremy raised his glass. He didn't mention our parents. He didn't talk about med school or legacies. He simply said, "There are people who show up because they're expected to, and there are people who show up because they mean it." I'm grateful I learned the difference. We clinked glasses. Matteo, of course, was there, already dancing with someone's cousin and wearing his loudest blazer. As the night wrapped up, Jeremy passed me a small envelope. "Open it later," he said. I did. Inside was a faded photo, one from our childhood, me and him sitting on the front porch, our legs dangling, our hands sticky with popsicle juice. No parents in sight, just the two of us, laughing. On the back, Jeremy had written in pen, "Turns out we were enough all along." And that's how the story ends. Not with a dramatic confrontation, not with applause from the people who never clapped, but with peace, and with finally learning that healing doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes, it's just learning to live louder than the silence they left you with. Some stories aren't about winning. They're about waking up one day and realizing you don't need to be chosen to matter. Zayn didn't get the applause, the toast, or the glossy photo on the mantle, but he built something stronger, a life defined by his own voice, not his family's silence. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've tried to shrink yourself to fit into someone else's definition of worth. Maybe you've waited for that one. I'm proud of you. That never came. If that's you, hear this: you are not invisible. You are not dramatic. You are not too much. You're just finally too free to play small. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's driving 6 hours away with the windows down, starting over where no one tells your story for you. And sometimes the only closure you'll get is peace. This is Telling Story with me, where real stories live, where silence is broken, and where people like you finally feel seen. If you've ever felt like the forgotten sibling, the background character, the quiet one who carried more than they showed, leave a comment. You're not alone. Subscribe to Telling Story with me for more true stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters. And if this story touched something in you, share it. Someone out there is still waiting for permission to walk away from a table where love was never served. You're not missing. You're just moving on.